All right, so here we are back to our notes. Okay, did you notice mRNA, tRNA, and rRNA? We're going to take some notes here, make a chart for yourself about mRNA, tRNA, and rRNA. So at the top of the chart, you're going to have 4 columns: type of RNA, role, how does it do it, and the name of the process. That's on the top. Along the sides, you're going to have a row for mRNA, which is messenger RNA. You're going to have a row for tRNA, which is transfer RNA. And lastly, you'll have a row for rRNA, which is ribosomal RNA. So if you want to go ahead and pause the video for a second and get your chart set up, I'm going to continue on to go through the chart. We're going to start with mRNA. The role of mRNA is to take the message from the DNA in the nucleus to the ribosome. So we're traveling from the nucleus, which houses the DNA, outside of the nucleus into the ribosome, where we make proteins, because that's the whole idea. That's why we do this process, to make proteins. Okay, how does the mRNA do it? It makes a copy or transcribes the DNA code using nitrogen bases. Those bases A, U, C, and G. And the name of that process is transcription. Okay, we're going to move on now to tRNA. The role of tRNA is to read the mRNA code and transfer pieces of the code to assemble a chain of amino acids. We have transfer italicized and underlined because T stands for transfer RNA. And I'm going to actually return back up here for a second to make sure you realize that message is italicized and underlined because M stands for messenger RNA. Right? Back to tRNA, the transfer RNA. So it reads the mRNA code and transfers the code to assemble a chain of amino acids. Okay, how does it do it? It reads or translates 3 nitrogen bases at a time to make an amino acid. Now we know that's called a codon, and we're going to get to that in a few slides to write down that vocabulary word. tRNA assembles the amino acids into a chain. The name of that process is translation. Okay. Lastly, we'll move to rRNA. rRNA's role, it makes up most of the ribosome and directs translation within the ribosome. You can remember that because R stands for ribosomal. Makes up the ribosome and directs translation. It's that guy that moves along the chain, those 2 circles we saw in the video. Okay, rRNA, how does it do it? It sends its message through the ribosome and it helps tRNA translate. This is part of the translation process. So tRNA and rRNA are involved in translation. mRNA is involved in transcription. So make sure you get all of these down on your chart. If you need to summarize any of the long sentences I have, make sure you get all the important information. I'm going to move on, but you are free to pause it and take as long as you like. So let's review what we saw in the video. First, we saw mRNA being made out of our DNA. This white here, these are our nucleobases or our nitrogen bases on the DNA. The black letters are rRNA, and you know that because we see a U in there, or the black letters are mRNA. All right, this is the RNA coming in and making a copy of the DNA. Right? So once that copy is done, however much of the DNA it needs to use, the copy starts to come out of the DNA, move through the nucleus, and eventually outside of the nucleus. So right here, this gray part is our nucleus. It's moving out of the nucleus towards the ribosome. Right? So in the ribosome, we have our amino acids, these little guys that are all different shapes. We also have rRNA. rRNA is quite happy to be doing its job. The mRNA, which is right here, our copy, our message, starts to feed through the two parts of our RNA. Right here, our RNA reads the mRNA. Okay? These three bases here and all groups of three afterward are known as codons. They code for each individual amino acid. So once this is starting to be read, tRNA comes in, and you can already see that tRNA is ready with bases attached to it. It's ready to match into something. Okay? And it also has an amino acid attached to it. It's ready to work. It gets to work moving along with our RNA. And as our RNA passes each codon, the tRNA has done its job and it leaves. And gradually, all of the amino acids will bond together to form a chain. This chain will be processed in the ribosome to make a protein. And if you think this all sounds a little bit overwhelming because there's a lot of new information, but really you already know that amino acids make up proteins. They are the building blocks. So now we're exploring how proteins are actually made. Okay, we're just breaking it down. You might see pictures like this in the future. This is what your book has to describe protein synthesis. So we start with our DNA. Okay, mRNA comes in. This is the half part of DNA. mRNA comes in and transcribes it, makes that message. Remember, we can tell this is mRNA because here's a U, and we can tell this is DNA because here's a T. So mRNA takes its message outside of the nucleus into the ribosome, where tRNA and rRNA translate it using these codons to connect to one amino acid and make a chain. Okay, so here's some information about codons. The tRNA reads the mRNA code 3 bases at a time. We already know that. Second bullet is the most important point I want to make to you, is a codon. It's a term used to describe a series of 3 bases in a row. Only 3 bases, always. No exceptions, no differences, will always be 3 bases. So, the 3 bases, the codon, determine what amino acid will make up a protein. And just as a review, protein synthesis uses DNA sequence as a blueprint, uses a code to make proteins out of that DNA. There are 2 important steps in protein synthesis: transcription and translation. Right? So here are the larger steps. Remember, we said proteins make up all of our traits. So we start with the DNA. DNA is transcribed and translated into amino acids, and amino acids build proteins. And the proteins join together to build our traits. So that's really how everything comes together and connects. So congratulations, if you're on this screen. You've reached the end of the lecture, and it's time to go take the quiz. The quiz on Buchanan Bio is located as a link right below the video, and the quiz on Edline is located in the same folder as this lecture. So I look forward to seeing you in class, and we'll be doing an exciting activity to discover and explore protein synthesis.